going on, Jeromes? It's a beautiful Saturday. Birds are chirping and stuff, and your Vikings are one day away from knocking the Packers out of the playoffs. It's going to be great, man. So, Q&A, and I know last week we sort of ran over time, but we'll try to keep it under 45 minutes today. And down the barrel of 45. Suspense. Hey, Andy. Listen for what feels like forever. Thank you. Keep killing it every week. Appreciate you. Random question. I just wondered if you have ever watched any anime. If so, do you have any favorites? Skull, no production value. Oh, is this an Asian thing? I don't know. So I was never really an anime as a kid. Here's what's funny. So I grew up in a small town with a lot of. I was like the only minority in school. So most of my friends growing up were white, and they were really into anime. A handful of them were. Like Dragon Ball Z? Is that an anime? So it was such a weird juxtaposition because all of the white kids were in anime, and also several of them got Asian writing tattoos. And I'm just like, no. Whatevs. Also dated a girl in college that was like super into anime, and also I honestly think she only dated me because I'm Asian and she had like a Asian thing. She didn't have the yellow fever, she had the yellow plague. Anyways, no, I watch the anime. Actually no, what's one? I was trying to think of the name of one. Anyways, and I wonder why these videos take half an hour, 45 minutes. Elite Draco. Hey, Andy, happy holidays. Back at you. What do you think of the losing record this season at home? By the way, love your perspective of the game. Thank you. Hey, thank you. The Vikings record at home this year has not been great. But they have been road warriors to a degree, winning at Carolina, at Chicago, at Green Bay. Actually, they won 5 out of 6 games on the road. And frankly, they should have beat the Broncos. So for that, and also they should have won 8 games in a row on the road. It's crazy. That it happens, but I don't know. I feel like the home field advantage has eroded in the NFL, and there's a lot smarter people than I on the sports betting side of things, because traditionally it's always been home field is worth 3 points. I think that's actually eroded quite a bit, and I think part of it has to do with. So what does it have to do with? I don't know, like neutral game day experience, better technology, and teams getting better at adjusting players' body clocks. Like even if you're just moving over 1 or 2 time zones, travel has improved. I think that's all part of it. But yeah, it's relatively. Don't want to say it's neutral. I mean, there's still obviously an edge of playing at home, but it's been weird. Next up, Trap Shoot. Hey Andy. Been watching you for a while. You're my go-to for Vikes content. Thank you. What do you think is the likelihood of the Vikes resigning Kirk? What do you think would be the fallout if we don't? What quarterback prospects are you looking at that would be a good fit in Kevin O'Connell's system? So I think the Vikings are like 90% to resign Kirk. I think that both sides realize that they're better together. And Kirk at 36, I personally don't think that he wants to uproot his family because that does play into part of it. Because money is money, but I mean Kirk does seem like a spendthrift. So the money is there. It isn't like he's going to go somewhere just because add an extra couple bucks, as evidenced by in 2018 when the Jets offered him $90 million guaranteed and he came here for $84 million. Now you could say taxes and cost of living factored in, yes, but also I think part of it is they're just Midwesterners. All right. Well, this is why from Atlanta. Doesn't matter. But yeah, that does factor in. Uprooting your kids. They've been here, for most of their childhood. I mean, Kirk's been here since 2018. So leaving their friends, uprooting all that stuff. I think that does factor in. Plus, it's very clear with the locker room. There's a lot of love and respect with Kirk Cousins, and it does go both ways. So I think that Kirk is going to be back here. If they don't, I think that the number one thing would be that Jaron Hall shows a little something. I don't think that Kirk would be anything but the first option. And also I don't think that Kirk is going to have a wandering eye to the Steelers or the Falcons or whatever. But I don't know, like if they don't resign him, I think that they would go hard in the paint in the draft, potentially trading up. I think the guy that would fit perfectly with Kevin O'Connell is Drake May, except I think that he has a good chance to go number 1 overall. Now, also, it's not in the realm possibility the Vikings trade all the way up, although I don't know if the Bears would trade in division, which would be kind of funny. But I love me some Drake May. I do love Jaden Daniels quite a bit. But, of course, you have to look at the 1 year of production. And also, is his style going to work in the NFL? I think it certainly could and should. You have to cater your offense to him. Caleb Williams, obviously, still like a lot, except there's a lot of question marks with him. Ewers is going back in all likelihood to Texas. J.J. McCarthy. I mean, McCarthy has the traits. I think that he would take some time to marinate. Same thing with Bo Nix. Penix I like a lot, but Penix's wild card is his health. Right? But I really do like Michael Penix a lot. And also Rattler's a bit of a wild card too. And why not? So I mean, this is going to be a fun season, draft season, because there's so many good quarterbacks in this class. Could set a record for first-round quarterbacks, or at least tie. The record from 83 was 6. And also, I think that you could set a record for most quarterbacks drafted day 1, day 2, as well as in the entirety of the draft. So, Eshterick, before their draft stock rises, I think we should have a fair shot at getting Jaden Daniels or J.J. McCarthy. Who do you think would fit our offense better? Oh, this plays in well. The present offense, the Kirk Cousins offense, I would take McCarthy. But if we're going to completely tear down and rebuild your offense around Jaden Daniels, I'm all in. I do think that Jaden Daniels has a chance to be a generational type player. I think that I think he's Lamar Jackson. I think his mobility, I think Lamar has a little bit of edge in mobility, even though Lamar's getting up there in age. But I think Jaden Daniels is a better passer. I think he's a little bit more accurate. And I got tons of love and respect for Lamar. I think that also, Jaden Daniels and Jaden McDaniels in the same state. Let's go. We're just so we got the market cornered on Dalvins and also guys named some variant of Jaden Daniels. There you go. Ron Randall. Having not been able to relax during a Vikings game all year, I'm going to try my best this weekend. I mean, we should have been able to relax the second half of the Saints game, but, I hope we get to see Hall and Love compete. They're very similar quarterbacks, young and mobile. I believe I have a funny feeling that Hall is going to light him up the last 2 games. Believe. That's right. Don't make me tap the sign. Jaron, so I think that Hall and Love are similar in that they both have a strong arm. I think Love has a slightly stronger arm. Hall, I think, is a little more controlled and accurate. But, I mean, both do have upside. But I think the Packers are going to ruin Jordan Love, which is great. And I think that Jaron Hall could actually pan out to be something. And we've gotten critiqued before. It's like, oh, you're always so uber positive and hyping up these guys. Now, we simply talk about what players could do versus focusing on what they can't do, which is what a lot of people do. So, could Josh Dobbs, if he settled down and played in the structure in the offense, be solid? And yes, he could have, but he didn't, and he's not. And same thing with Nick Mullins. Hey, Nick Mullins didn't throw 4 interceptions. The rest of his game was actually pretty damn good, but he can't stop taking chances downfield, man. So that's the thing. I'm a Jaron Hall. I think his maturity level is great. I think that he plays in structure. I think that he throws an accurate ball at all 3 levels. I think he's got great arm strength, both downfield as well as outside the numbers. And I think that his maturity is a plus. And I think that he's a guy that's going to command the huddle, going to command the line of scrimmage. And there's a lot of upside to Jaron Hall. But if he sucks, he sucks. We'll move on. R2J2. Drake May, Jane Daniels, Michael Penix. Those are the 3 quarterbacks I would take in the first round, regardless if we have a trade or not. Which one do you think is the best? How are these all the same question? I should have gone through a little bit better. But of those 3, I would rank them the current offense. Drake May 1, Penix 2. Actually, May and Penix might be 1A, 1B, and then Jaden Daniels would be 3. But again, if you're going to tear down and completely build around Jaden Daniels, I'm in on him. I would almost consider. I mean, things are going to shift around during the draft process. I think that there's a very good chance that Drake May goes to number 1. But if it was me, I would take Jaden Daniels number 1 over Drake May and Caleb Williams. As weird as that sounds, I feel like the juice would be worth the squeeze. I think that there's a little bit more risk with Daniels over Caleb Williams and Drake May, but no risk it, no biscuit. Praise the sun. We need to talk about how this team's record could look if they only turned the ball over one time per game. Question Kevin O'Connell on this team all you want, but they've been in every game, and even when they just give the other team the ball multiple times. And that's what's been really frustrating. And especially the last couple of games where the Vikings have lost a turnover battle against the Broncos, the Bears, the Bengals, and the Lions, and all four of them have been very close. And again, what sucks is after the game, you'll be like, oh, well, there's so many injuries, it's okay to lose. No, it's not okay. It really isn't. And the fact that the Vikings with so many injuries were in these games, but they literally gave the game away due to turnovers, it's frustrating. It is. And the Vikings having that nice 5-game winning streak in the middle was awesome. 2 of the games were with Kirk. 3 of them would not with Kirk. And I don't know. It's just really tough. And I understand that Kevin O'Connell's doing the best that he can with what he's got. But, man, again, it's just so the Vikings. How are the Vikings 7-8? Again, they're the only team in the league besides the Ravens who haven't gotten their ass kicked by multiple scores. Just tough, man. Tough. Next, John Gross Bauer. If the Vikings could get any quarterback, who would you think would be most realistic, and what would they have to give up? Get any quarterback? Mahomes, they would have to give up half the franchise, like equity-wise. Hank's history. What do we think of Kevin O'Connell's philosophy of resting players during preseason and maybe having less contact in practice to prevent injuries after the season? It has not worked, obviously, and we have started off slow because of it. I think that's a fair point. And also you look at the Rams where, that's where Kevin O'Connell has gotten the idea of, hey, let's not play our starters in preseason. And it's worked with McVay sometimes, but also they started out very slow this year. And I think the addition of the 18th game, I think coaches are much more wary about health, but also a lot of the injuries. Could you say that is due to fatigue? Not particularly. I don't think there's too much of a correlation there, but sometimes you do have to question it. Whereas shaking off some rust, I understand that you can simulate game situations in the joint practices and in just practice regular, but getting some game action, especially when you got younger players, I think that is important. The soggy bit, but guys like Kirk Cousins don't need preseason, or guys like JJ, but the soggy biscuit. Based on the teams in the race right now, who do you think the Vikings have the most realistic chances of beating in the playoffs if they squeak in? So as of right, well, they beat the Niners, and they'll say, well, the San Francisco didn't have Debo. Yeah, the Vikings didn't have JJ, so we'll call it a wash, even though it's not a wash. Philly, Vikings should have beat Philly at Philly, and the Eagles are frauds. I think the Lions are just aching to get beat, and I think the Vikings could beat the Lions. Vikings lost to the Buccaneers, but, again, they did give that game away. Dallas, depends on which Dallas shows up, and also Dallas would be at home if they did end up winning the NFC East, so I don't know. I actually think that the Rams would be the team that I would least want to see right now. As weird as that sounds. San Francisco, but among everyone else, the teams I would least like to face, the Rams, the Cowboys, if the Cowboys are on their game, and then I have no compunction, playing at Philly or at Detroit or at Tampa Bay or anything like that. So, next up is Kyle Enstrom. It's crazy to think most Vikings fans were pumped about Brian Asamoah before the season, but he's been a non-factor. Thoughts for him next year? Well, part of it is that Asamoah's been really dinged up throughout training camp and throughout the season. Also, you look at how good that Jordan Hicks played, and obviously how great Ivan Pace Jr. has been. But also when Hicks went out with that injury, basically Pace was the only linebacker. Dye got a couple of snaps here or there, but I'm not ready to give up on Asamoah. I think that it was a transition this year from Donachelle to Flores, and also health plays an issue too. Can't make the club in the tub, but I actually do think that Asamoah, especially given his versatility, and a Flores 6th round for another year, I think that he could thrive next year, pending if they bring back Jordan Hicks. Merle Hexum. Also, basically, Metellus has been a third linebacker, so that's part of it, too. Do you think we should have went after Lamar in the offseason? Well, a lot of people have been like, well, how come the Falcons didn't go after Lamar? I mean, Lamar was never leaving Baltimore, and all of the contract negotiations, everyone was talking tough, blah, 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 but they got it done. And also, remember, Lamar didn't have an agent. So, these teams that want to talk to him when he's on the exclusive franchise tag and would have to give up 2 first-rounders, I mean, it wasn't going to happen. Like, it wasn't just that a team would give up 2 first-rounders and give him a contract. The Ravens would have matched basically anything that was put out there. Now you could get into, poison pill stuff and construct the contract, blah, blah, blah. But I still think that the Ravens were ready to pay top dollar for Lamar. They just basically wanted someone else to set the price, and maybe they could save a couple bucks. That's exactly what was going to go on. I think there was 99% chance that Lamar was going to be a Raven this year, and a trade wasn't going to go through. Drew Smith. Also, people criticize Washington and Atlanta and whoever else is like, how come we didn't go after Lamar? Well, it would have been really awkward to have an offer on the table, and then the Ravens obviously match it in 2 seconds, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're fully behind you, Desmond Ridder and Sam Howell. I think behind the scenes, they knew that any offer that was going to be made wasn't going to be matched. Drew Smith, or was going to be matched, rather. Do you think the Vikings could draft the right tackle of the future to replace Brian O'Neill this offseason? Do you think they'd be willing to spend multiple draft picks on the O-line? Hopefully O'Neill's going to be good to go for 5, 6, 7 years. Hopefully he has a Lane Johnson-type arc to him. I would spend draft picks in terms of depth along the O-line. I would make re-signing Reisner a priority, extending Darisaw a priority too, but getting some interior depth would be important. And if you want to bring in like a young swing tackle that you can groom to maybe eventually take over for O'Neal, wouldn't have trouble with that. Arfree. Realistically, any chance B-Flow stays for one more year with the way the injuries have got in the way this year, or will the possible record number of openings be too much to pass up? Where would his best fit be if he does take a head coaching job this upcoming year? I think his best fit would be New England. And I know that there's been reports that Gerard Mayo is the coach in waiting there, but we'll see. But Flores came up through the Patriots organization. By all accounts that I've seen, it seems like he and Robert Kraft have a good relationship. Flores played at Boston College, and he started off as a scout, I believe, with the Patriots before switching to becoming a position coach, before eventually becoming defensive coordinator in everything but name. But I think Flores, especially given his experience in Miami, I think that he's not going to take a job just to take a job, right? And it's going to be sort of like a Dan Quinn situation where, DQ's been in demand for the last 2-3 hiring cycles, but he stuck with Dallas because the right fit didn't come up. And I think it's possible that Flores might not find the right fit, even though there's going to be a ton of job openings. Also, let's be honest. Some owners may take Flores' name off the table because of Flores' lawsuit. So I think that's a factor there. And again, selfishly, I would love to have Flores back for another year. And I also think that is relatively realistic. But, Flores, if he's back, pay him. Make him the highest paid assistant in the NFL. Caleb Hogan. Want to know your thought on this take? The Vikings Alliance played great this year, and our running backs have played decently, but obviously not real great. But main reason for lack of running game is O'Connell. No creativity in the running game, just your basic run plays that every defense knows how to stop. Maybe we go after an assistant who knows how to scheme. I think that's fair. And also I think that running backs coach Curtis Modkins, who is the title of the run game coordinator, I think that does factor in as well. I think that the entire revamp of the run game, you got horses up front, and you got some athletes in back also. Madison hasn't been very efficient this year. No, the answer would not have been bring back Dalvin. You see how he's operating with the Jets. But, hey, free Ty Chandler, more. And also bring in more dynamic athletes at the running back position. Also, I have this weird thing in the back of my head. It's like, hey, they're going to sign Josh Jacobs. Like, Kwesi just going to go completely against type and sign a running back to a long-term deal. Yeah. Benjamin Burrito. Is this Harrison Smith's last year in purple? If so, what teams could use his help? And also, does our safety group improve with him gone? I think this is Harrison's last year in purple. I think he retires. And he's a guy who has a lot of interests outside of the game. I think the safety group. Yeah, so we've been saying for a while that Lewis Cine was drafted to be the replacement for Harrison Smith, and if he doesn't fracture his leg in London, I think that Lewis Cine will be starting in the Harrison Smith spot right now. But also with Beasley and Metellus, you're good to go. And also, this is such a unique defense that 3 I mean, you have three safeties starting on the field all the time. That's basically what it is. But what teams could benefit? I don't want to say it. I really, really do not want to say it. But I think that if Harrison plays for another year, I think that Chicago makes sense. Also, like him and Eddie Jackson would be a nice duo. There's a lot of overlapping concepts between Eberflus and Zimmer's scheme on the back end. Also, Harrison being a former Notre Dame Golden Domer would be very well received in Chicago. But again, I don't want to say it. Also, wherever Zimmer goes, I mean, that's obviously a connection there. And also, I think that Zimmer's going to be DC of the Packers next year. I really do. Anasol. What can defense do differently to adapt to Bengals and Lions strategies, which seemed to work against them? What can defense do different? I think you got to keep your foot on the gas. And the Vikings kept the Bengals in check 3 quarters, and then they. I understand it's the whole blitzing 5-6 consistently and then dropping 8. It's the fastball changeup sort of deal. But I mean, there's too many times they're just dropping, and they weren't getting pressure with 4, and that's exactly what happened against the Bengals. They just sat back and was like, hey, Jake Browning can't beat us, and then Jake Browning beat him. And with the Lions, I think it just came down to not being able to stop the run as well as third down defense. So I mean, it's not a spot where it's like, well, they just solved Flores. I think it just sort of is what it is. And also, I mean, the Lions are very well coached on offense. Respect to Ben Johnson there. I ain't going to pay him $50 million a year, though. Get out of here. Corey O'Neill, you ever going to have a fancy start-sit weekly segment? Not with my teams, man. Like, that's the thing, too. I think that's my blind spot. I'm bad at fantasy football. The Soggy Biscuit, which team do you think was the biggest surprise standout this year? And which team do you think is a surprise bust? Give me the Browns and the Patriots, respectively. I think everyone knew that the Patriots are going to be bad. I mean, the Jets, but I mean, that hinged on Rodgers' injury. Although, I feel like the Jets would have been ass, thank you, even with Rodgers, because that offensive line wasn't going to get magically better with Rodgers in there, and also that schedule is tough. So I'll say the Jets for the bust. Bears for the bust, too. Surprise good team. Maybe the Ravens. Ravens are always tough and competitive, but they look really good right now. The Browns too, dealing with all those injuries, that's a factor. Can I say bust for the Jaguars? I mean, because the Jaguars started off really strong, and now it seems like they're fading down the stretch. Yeah. Ethan Lupke. Should we go quarterback early and let them train under Cousins for a year or two, then let him play? Also, yes. I think that would be the ideal situation. Also, should we go running back in later rounds because a good running back can be found in a round? Yeah, I'm perfectly fine if they want to spend day 3 selection on a running back. Also, I think they have 3 fifth-round picks. John Marley. I predicted Mullins would throw 2 interceptions in the first half in last week's Q&A, but Hall didn't start. Second half, the Vikings didn't make the playoffs. Who's your dark horse to win the Super Bowl this year? The Rams are playing some really good football right now. I mean, could we get a Rams Browns Super Bowl? That'd be so random and weird, but I'll be down for it, man. Also, the Bills are playing really good right now. It's a whole thing about it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And the Bills and the Rams are starting to play some really good ball right now. Christian Augustine, with the Broncos reportedly cutting Wilson this offseason, what are your thoughts on the Vikings picking him up? So I understand that with the offset language, you could basically sign him for the league minimum, and his cap hit would be negligible, and then you'd have the $28.5 million of the void years dead cap from Kirk in 2024. So financially, yes, it could make sense, but if you're going to run it back with a 36-year-old quarterback, I'd rather it be Kirk, because Kirk's been ingrained with his team in the locker room. Russ, I mean, you see with the Broncos, like he just didn't mesh with that locker room, and I think that would be just affecting team chemistry. Like, if you're going to get rid of Cousins, let's just start anew with Jaron Hall and rookie quarterback TBD. But yeah, I'm over Band-Aid situations, man. Like, no more McNabbs, no more none of that. Showdown. Say all the players re-sign this offseason. What would be your top 3 positions need heading to the draft? So, Kirk back, JJ extended, Darisaw extended, Daniil back. We'll say Wana back, not Marcus Davenport. What would be top 3 positions need? D-line, specifically nose tackle. but also 5-tech. So the entire defensive line needs help. Other positions need corner. Yeah, where I like Evans. I like Mekhi Blackman. I like Murphy. I like Booth to a degree. More depth. Knack Dog. Besides our boy Tavondre Sweat, the Pride of Texas, hook him. Who is your quarterback in this draft at this point? Who sits a year or two behind Kirk? Realistically, where the Vikings draft, I really like Penix. But, of course, you have to check out those knees. And I think Penix is underrated because he's got that clutch gene. I think that his arm is perfectly adequate. I think that he throws with anticipation and accuracy, and I think that he's got great leadership intangibles. And people will knock him because of the knees, and also people are straight up going to knock him because he's left-handed. Nathan Bale. What's the honest likelihood the Vikings sign back Jefferson and Kirko? I actually think they're a package deal. I like we said, I think it's 90% Kirk resigns. If Kirk resigns, I think JJ signs his extension. I firmly believe that. L. Skinnerd. Has this been the most what-if season for the Vikings? I can't recall another year with the amount of significant injuries to so many starters and contributing backups. Makes me hit the brakes on nitpicking Kevin McConnell's late game play calling considering the success he's had. You can do both things, where just because there's injuries, doesn't really excuse some of the play calling late in games, especially against the Bengals and especially against the Bears. Well, the entire game plan against the Bears, and also the last drive against the Broncos. So, it's tough. Where you look at the Vikings this year, all the close games woulda, coulda, shoulda, and then you go look at the Browns, who've been dealing with other significant injuries and also are on their QB4, and they just clinch a playoff spot. Next is Mr. Lips. Do you think they start Jaren Hall next week if Mullins gets a nod this week but has a sloppy game? Say we win 17-14. No, I think they'll roll with them either way. Like, absent Hall throwing like 4 terrible interceptions and having like a 9.4% turnover play rate. I don't know who had that. I think they'll roll with the kid no matter what. Kanye West, biggest fan. If JJ never got hurt, it'd probably cause a chain reaction where Kirk doesn't get injured, the Vikings would be Super Bowl favorites. That's what's frustrating right now. It's like if Kirk, forget JJ. If Kirk didn't get hurt, the Vikings would be in the thick of things right now, probably be vying for the 1 seed, and also I think that Kirk would be in the MVP conversation. Kyle Engstrom, I watched Rick Spielman talk about Kirk on his first pick podcast, and he said there is no way he takes a 1-year deal, most likely looking for a 3-year deal. What should we do? Well, could meet in the middle because I don't think that Kirk would leave, absent, the Steelers giving him like a 3-year, $150 million deal, fully guaranteed. But hey, you want a 3-year deal? Okay, it's going to be front loaded. Basically, first year guaranteed. A second year has some guarantees, but on the third day of the new league year, and basically a team option for year 3. That's what you want. That's what you're going to get. XK Vang. How can we realistically evaluate Jaren Hall if he finishes out the regular season? Well, I know it'd be more ideal to give him more time, to have more tape on him, but this is what happens. And again, it's not like he's a first-round pick; he's a fifth-round pick, and you take what you can get. And it sucks that he got concussed against the Falcons because I think that given the long stretch, like if he didn't get hurt, I think that the Vikings would have a very clear picture of a type of player he is. And frankly, I think that the Vikings probably would have won some of those close games that they lost against the Broncos, Bears, Bengals, and Lions. Because I think that Jaren Hall is going to take care of the football a lot better than Mullins, a lot better than the Passionate. And again, it sucks, but sort of is what it is, and work with what you got. So he's got 2 games plus playoffs to really show what he can do. Next. Vinny Peller, what do you think about the quarterback situation? I'm actually okay with it because you're going to find out if Jaren Hall can be the guy or not, and it's good data either way because then if he's the guy, maybe you don't draft a quarterback first or second round. Maybe it's not that high a priority because Jaren Hall could be the dude going forward. And if he's not the guy, that means that you have priority and also potentially re-signing Kirk. Also, all these things can happen once. You can re-sign Kirk, Jaren Hall could be the guy, and you draft a quarterback because that's how the board breaks, which I'd be perfectly okay with. Bryson Kent. If the Panthers' new regime doesn't want Bryce Young, should the Vikings make a call? Rumor is that's who they wanted in last year's draft. Well, it seems like Bryce Young was the owner's call, and the coaching staff whether it be McCown, whether it be Frank Reich wanted C.J. Stroud. But I mean that could also be a little bit of a revisionist history because of the way that their two careers have started. But I think whoever gets a head coaching job in Carolina, I mean, Tepper's a guy that fires coaches fast and doesn't mind paying everything out. But I feel like you got to give Bryce Young a legitimate shot next year, even though you don't have a first-round pick, which is going to end up being number 1 overall in all likelihood. You got to give him a shot with a new coach, with some weapons, with better offensive line, because I think that he can be the guy. But this year's been rough. This year's been really rough. Although I feel like if you plot Bryce Young in the Vikings offense with O'Connell and JJ and Addison and a healthy Hockenson and a good old line, I mean, come on. Robs, if the Vikings would not exist, which franchise would you root for and why? So we get this question a bunch. I always say probably the Raiders. Although, I mean, this isn't just bandwagoning either. Like, I had a Tim Couch Brown jersey in 1999. I wish I had pictures of it. It's kind of crazy because I sort of latched onto him because of the history, and it's like they had their team stolen. And this is also about the time when the Vikings were being threatened to move to San Antonio with Red McCombs. So just like, oh, what would that be like? Glad we didn't have to find out. Chris Erickson, should the Vikings schedule a spring exhibition game against the Jets to rekindle the Viking-Jets rivalry? Yes, the dumbest rivalry in sports history. But Dalvin has to play. Traveler, how are your fantasy teams doing? In the finals in 2 out of 4, but the 2 that I didn't make were the ones that mattered the most. It's usually how it goes. Is it weird, like fantasy teams and leagues that you care the least about? Like, you don't put in waiver claims, you don't really make trades, you just set your lineup like an hour before kickoff versus the other one where you're stressing about every single one and you're going into the ratings and everything. You do better in the former rather than the latter. It's weird. All-Star Elite. I firmly believe that Kirk Cousins will be a front runner for MVP right now if he stayed healthy. Do you agree? Yes. Yeah. Or if you extrapolate his numbers, I mean, and the Vikings would be winning and be near the top of the NFC, I think certainly he would. Pulford, favorite country song? Basically anything Brooks and Dunn. Big Brooks and Dunn fan. Neon Moon is great. Also, Cody Jinks is really good. And who else? Whiskey Myers is a band I like a lot. They've come through Twin Cities a bunch of times. Have you ever been to a rodeo? I have not, so that would be my first rodeo. Traveler, you own a team in a 7-7 league. Who is on your team? Players both O and D. 1 quarterback, 1 wide receiver, 5, 1 snapper. Snapper, I'm actually going to take Garrett Bradbury. Since there's no contact, his mobility is going to be good. Quarterback, I'll still take Mahomes. I mean, let's be honest here. Receivers, JJ, CD. I'll have A.J. Brown on the outside, except he can't complain about touches. And then, see, on the outside, I want to go Mike Evans again. I mean, Mike Evans is just a dude, consistent. And then on the inside, I would take either Amon-Ra or Zay. That might surprise people. Defensively, Sauce, Surtain. I know that he's had a down year, but I'll take Derwin James. Mike Hilton of the Bengals. I think he's really underrated. Although this isn't contact, so maybe that's a factor. Antoine Winfield Jr. Kyle Hamilton, yes. Yeah, Kyle Hamilton. And then my defensive lineman, I'll just take Micah. Go ahead. There we go. Vinny Peller. What's a reasonable price for Mahomes? So you can, on a given day, you can trade up to 3 years of draft picks. But on draft day or during the NFL draft, that same rule applies. So you can trade the current draft pick as well as 3 years in advance. So you can get up to 4 first-round picks. It's not enough. It's not enough. I mean, I know that it's popular to shat on Mahomes this year, but there's a lot of reasons why Kansas City has struggled. But Mahomes still 1A for me. So, I mean, reasonably, if a team want to give up 10 first-round picks for Mahomes, I don't think that's unreasonable. And people will be like, oh, that's crazy. But if you got the best quarterback in football, those first-round picks are going to be late. And way less valuable. And if you're a team right now, if you could open up and give up, well, say 5 first-round picks and 6 years of second-round picks, you would do it. 100% you would do it. Blake Kettler, what's your opinion? It being almost January and we ain't got no snow. I don't know. Like, I know people point out climate change, but it feels like 97, 98 was kind of similar to this. But I don't know. It's odd. I would like to have a little snow for Christmas. And actually, I don't mind snow, mainly because I don't have to commute. And also, the wife doesn't have to commute anymore. So I think that's part of it. But yeah. Also, favorite gift you've ever given and or received for Christmas? Given is, we give our kids a lot of like artsy or sciencey or like STEM type gifts. And my daughter is so into Legos right now. And we got her like this giant like Harry Potter train set and all these very intricate and like 1,000-piece Lego sets. And she loves them. And she will literally just sit and focus all day, just sitting at a table. Not eating, not drinking, not on her tablet, not doing anything, just like focus on the task and building things. She loves doing that. Grace Receive. So when I was 6, I got a Super Nintendo. Baby, let's go. Maybe I was 5. Somewhere in there. Dylan, also 98 Randy Moss jersey. Come on, man. Dylan Mollenhauer. If Jaron Hall balls out and we make the playoffs and not even win the playoffs, do you think Kwesi coming to call a roll with him next year, or do you think it's too small of a sample size? I think if he balls out for these next 2 games, I think it's certainly possible that he could just be anointed the guy. I don't think it's likely, but it could come to a decision with Kirk. But it would provide leverage as opposed to, hey, how about $30 million per year as opposed to market rate of like 45? Actually, that might be too much of a cut. But either way, I would love to see it. If Jaron Hall plays good the rest of the way, God. Tyler Johnson guitar. Do you enjoy Lowry season salt? Yeah. So even though I'm a bit of a, I don't want to say like gourmand or chefy because that's kind of douchey, but I do like to cook a lot. I use a lot of pink Himalaya sea salt for things, but I mean, Lowry's is just good. I understand that there's a lot of garbage in it, but I mean, it just tastes good. All right, so Lowry's, so like if you do like grilled summer burgers over charcoal, I feel like that there's just something with Lowry's that just kicks it off. Or it's nice. Also do the dimple and the ice cube method. God. Kubik's Cube. Will Kwesi and company go after the first round talent for quarterback? I guess. Unless Jaron Hall just looks really good. Who knows, man? OTL Shaw. Caleb Evans is a good run stopper, but the pass coverage is horrible. I mean, that's sort of fair. I mean, Caleb Evans has had good moments in coverage. He's had bad moments, but hopefully things round out. Bane of Gotham Town. What's your take on the surge of toxic Lions fans lately? Well, I mean, years of frustration. And I get it. Like, I commiserate. There's a lot of chest thumping right now, but get out of your system. We'll see if this is sustainable. And also, we'll see you week 18 and maybe the playoffs. Yeah. But let them have their moment in the sun. Conan Billy Bone. When we beat the Greasy Grimy Green Bay Packers, what will our playoff position be? Understanding we need help. Well, if the Rams win at... Who the hell are they playing? Rams win at Giants, and if Seattle beats the Steelers at home, and even if the Vikings win, things are still hold serve. But if the Vikings win and the Rams or the Seahawks lose, since there's no head-to-head, it comes down to conference record, and at 8-8, the Vikings would have a better conference record at 7-4 versus the Rams at 6-5 or Seattle at 6-6. So that's how that would work out. Next. Wild Bumblebee Lee. Andy, do you have any relatives in or from Frogtown neighborhood? No, not that I know of, because I'm adopted. Certainly could. I mean, a lot of Asians in Frogtown. Do you think Jaron Hall will ball out on Sunday Night Football? Yes. I think the moment, as well as the very poor and very poopy Packers defense, I mean, everything's going to come up Millhouse. Duke of Austin, was Hawkinson or Laporta? Who got the better end of the trade? I mean, the draft picks for Hawkinson weren't actually. Were they taken for Laporta? Either way, I mean, Laporta is really good, and I think he's gonna be great. Hawkinson, Hawkinson for me is a top 2 tight end, and the injury really sucks, and puts the start of his 2024 season up in the air. So it's just really horrible. But I think it's a case where both sides win. Sort of like the Diggs and Jefferson trade. Twinkie Main. Never understood the tanking mentality. I may as well tank every year to secure a top 10 pick every year. Hall sends the Packers packing. Simple as that. Who says no? I think that's fair. I think people get too grooved into the draft. I mean, they forget history of bust rates and whatever. You draft where you draft, and you look through the league. Lamar was 32. Brady was 6th rounder. Purdy was 7th rounder. Dak and Kirk were 4th rounders. Russell, I think, was a 3rd round pick. Peak Russell. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, for every Peyton Manning up there at 1, there's a bunch of jabronis don't work out. All right, so I think it comes down to a very good scouting department. I think it comes down to good setting your board up well, and also developing players. I mean, you can have all the talented players in the world, but if your coach sucks and there's no chemistry and there's no culture, they're not going to thrive. So it's not just a matter where you pick or who you pick. You got to be able to develop. So here, Nickel State. Cap question. Could we resign JJ, CD, and Hunter in the offseason? Yes, because I trust Rob Brzezinski. TW, good guy. Okay, I want the Vikings to win 2 games, but I don't want to be in the playoffs. Why not? I understand people be like, oh, well, they're going to get beat in the first round. I would love that chance. I would love that opportunity, because what are the Vikings going to be? Like 27-point dogs? Give me the points. God, again, every single game this year for the Vikings, even when they've been overmatched, they've had a puncher's chance. And some days that punch is going to land square on the chin. And also, I would absolutely love and adore knocking the Lions out of the playoffs, or the Cowboys, or the Eagles, or hell, San Francisco, who the Vikings have beat. There you go. Keep school alive. Christian Augustine. What is Jordan Addison's ceiling? I think he could be a Pro Bowl caliber player, and he's really good. And the other day I was trying to think like who Jordan Addison reminds me of. He actually reminds me a lot of Chad Johnson. Maybe a little bit slighter in stature, but just his slipperiness, especially at the top of the route, great hands, understanding where the dead spots are in zone. I think Addison is going to be really good, man. And that's even not taking into account constantly facing QB cornerback 2s because of JJ. Cool Man Clash. I'm not Greg Joseph's cousins. All right. Jared Allen is HOF. Russell Wilson. Nah. But that's it. That's the Q&A for the week. Oh, hey, 42 minutes. Great. You guys are the best. Skull production value.